All
Welcome
right.
to another edition of Ordinary Conversations. I'm your host, Chris Polk, and the guy to my left, I think, if I think about how this thing, that's John Hayes. I've known of John for a few years now. We've had some text conversations. I think we bumped into each other at Home Depot one day. I've always found John to be a really interesting guy and wanted to have him on here so we can have a conversation. So, do you know how we got connected?
No,
You don't
not
have a
really. No. Do
um,
you?
I would think it would be through some mutual friend. We grew up in the same area, right? Hurricane,
Right.
West Virginia, right? I graduated high school in '94. When did you graduate?
I was 97.
97. So you're 3 years behind me. So, we've been in this kind of, general geographical area. Um, you're in construction, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, that's a family business?
Yeah. Yeah. Hayes Brothers Construction. Yeah. We started 2005, middle 2005, something like that.
Okay.
So,
Was your dad or other family into that, or is that just something you guys started on your own?
uh, yeah, I started it. I graduated from Shepherdstown in the Eastern Panhandle, and dad had an opportunity and, you know, kind of moved me back home situation. And then about 4 years into it, I got my brother Jason involved. That's where Hayes Brothers. I assumed that one of my three older brothers would want to be involved, so that's where that name comes from. And yeah, we've been running it since mid 2005, something like that. Uh, and come to think of it, our connection might be Joey Racer. You remember Joe Racer?
Yeah, Joe's my cousin.
Oh, Joe's your cousin. There you go.
Yeah,
All right.
yeah.
So I grew up by him down on Virginia Avenue.
Okay,
So yeah, we used to be thick as thieves when I was way little. Like 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. He was our neighbor.
okay. Yeah, that makes sense. It's funny how you make some of these connections on Facebook and with people from other states and even other countries, and
Yeah.
you don't know where we're really even because we probably didn't cross paths in high school. Um, I was big into music and, a lot of people were into sports or other stuff. And um, so you guys have, what's it been about 15 years now in the construction business?
Yeah. Yeah.
So what's is it remodeling or new construction or what kind of stuff do y'all do?
Oh well, when we started, it was all new construction, like custom builds, and we still do custom builds, but we also do remodels and complete renovations and some light commercial stuff. So we'll renovate an insurance building, or we did a building for Toyota, for instance, out behind their pharmacy out front. So we get into a little bit. I got about 10 guys. I got four framing, four on the frame crew. I got four of the guys I call house ninjas, where they know how to do plumbing, electric, a little bit of everything. My specialty is tile, and then I kind of facilitate those 10 men.
Okay.
So yeah, people call us for all kinds of things, and we're pretty good at everything. So it just depends on schedule and all that and getting to it. So um,
So what's the last 6 weeks been like for you guys?
man, it's been very interesting. My frame crew, they didn't skip a beat. We made that was um, a cognizant decision that we made on our own. Basically, we were all a little bit freaked out. Everybody's like, oh, okay, they're shutting Las Vegas down. That's kind of serious. So, when they shut Las Vegas down, we're like, oh, these cats love money. So let's take a pause. But what we ultimately decided was if if we weren't going to be around people or jeopardizing anything, if our situation was going to be such that we could go to a place and do what we do without putting anyone in harm's way, then there's no reason for us to stop. Um,
Mhm.
so that's what we did, the frame crew. And then I furloughed several people, uh, and just me and my right hand man Jared, we kept going on the house ninja side of things, where again we would go to work, but we try not to be around anybody. I stopped putting people on top of each other, as far as like, if I had an electrician coming and HVAC the next day, I give them a little bit of distance, and they wanted the distance as well, where, the job would go on. It slowed down a little bit, and people were just a little bit more reticent to be around each other. And we respected that. And so, yeah, we haven't stopped. It slowed down a little bit, but now it's opening back up a little bit more. So, and we're responding to that. So that's what we're up to.
The majority of my trucking business is custom doors, windows, and cabinets, and so the plant doesn't build anything unless there's an order,
Right.
and the volume is down some, but, I'm mainly delivering to, ABC supply company or some other contracting outfit. And the majority of my business is in Pennsylvania, where the governor told them to shut down, and they told him to pound sand, that they weren't shutting down. And through my travels, I've talked to a lot of people, and I'm like, okay, so what are you seeing? And they're like, we've got a few customers that told us they didn't want us around, but the overwhelming majority are like, yeah, I've got a project. I need roofed. I need my job finished. And so they have continued to operate. And I have really struggled, especially over the last probably 2 weeks, with this idea of a third party that can come between you and I, that you and I can have a voluntary transaction, an interaction where we say, okay, well, we're going to do a deal. And, in order to do this deal, we got to talk to each other. We got to meet each other. We got to schedule things. And then someone just comes in and says, no, you can't. And I'm like, well, you know what? I'm a big boy. I can decide who and when I can interact with. And it just seems kind of, disturbing is kind of the word, that these people kind of behave like they have ownership of us, and, I have never gone into in any interaction where I've said, well, I hope they got a license. It's never happened. I don't care if you pay your taxes, if you make pretty bathrooms, you know what I mean? So if I can get the money together and you come over here and I turn you loose on one of these bathrooms, I couldn't care less if you have a license.
Right. That's the deal. Yeah.
So how would you describe or characterize your own personal philosophy of life?
Well, according to that, it depends. I guess I would say it's all very nuanced, obviously, but yeah, philosophically, I agree with you in terms of, you're born free. Absolutely. Nobody, there's no kingdom. There's no any of this. There's no any of that. Right. If you and I decide we're trading, and that's what we do. And I've done that with federal people. I've done that with state people. I've done that with county people, and to varying degrees of taxes and this and that, like at the end of the day, put all those labels away, and what helps each other is what gets done. And ultimately, I think that's what gets done anyway. But I would also say that, with this whole thing, it's kind of a new situation, because it's a big bad boogie monster that's out to get us. And it's like, when it first hit, it was like, does it rain down from the sky? Like that's how the media made it sound. Like, if you go outside, you're going to get COVID. You know what I mean? That's what's going to happen. And then after, again, I never stopped. I had to switch my schedule. The schools weren't open. So, there were some caveats made, and we had to figure out how we were going to move forward as a family. But what I've noticed, like societally, is people do pretty good jobs of governing themselves. They weren't pulling people over for 6, 8 weeks. They're still not really pulling people over. People are busting 75, 80, and everybody, less wrecks, crime's down. It kind of makes you think, well, geez, man, are we at this point just giving each other things to do? Like, is that what we're doing? Because when you have food and shelter and all these things figured out, you got water, are we not just wasting time or filling our time with things to do? So it makes me wonder if that's what half of the bureaucracy is for. But I would also step short of saying that, that they're trying to keep people down by asking people to wear masks or asking people to keep social distance. I think they're scared because they don't know what it is, which alerts the rest of us that, if they don't know what it is, and we've been trusting them for all this time, if they don't know what it is, man, maybe we should also take a step back. But so it's been 7-8 weeks of that, and people are kind of like, well, I'm getting the sense that the general population is, if I'm going to get it, I'm going to get it, but they're still being smart about it. They're if they're 400 pounds and diabetic, they're probably not going to be going out. But if they're, I don't say regular or just typical person, they're going to take their chances a little more, and they're like, okay, something's got to give. Push has to come to shove. A lot of things are going on, but we can't stop. You literally can't stop. They can't slay a bunch of hogs and line them up and burn them up, and then supply lines break down, and you're not working, you're not moving anything. People aren't doing the jobs, people aren't going to work, people aren't producing economy. So I'm kind of in the middle there. So, like, for instance, when I go to Kroger's or Home Depot, especially Home Depot and Lowe's right now, I wish I had stock in those places. Good Lord. Yeah, when I go to those places, I wear a mask, and that's mainly for my protection. And also, I have a super cool Bane mask. It looks like Bane off of Batman. I'm not going to get an opportunity next year to wear that. They're going to be like, hey, weirdo, where to figure this out? You know what I mean? I don't want to be that dude. So now I'm going to be that dude. I got to do it at Banks for just a minute. But anyway, long story short, I think there's a middle ground that we all need to try to hit. Need to be kind of Swedish about it. If somebody's in bad shape, make sure they're kept away. But churches do that for a lot of people. Oh, sorry about that. Yeah, churches do that for a lot of people, and people take care of one another on their own. You don't really need government for that.
Yeah,
so that's where I'm at on that.
I have experienced where, with my personal philosophy of, I don't have a team anymore,
Mm-hmm.
And
what team were you on? Who were you with?
I was Team Red. I was a good patriotic evangelical conservative. I listened to 16 hours of right-wing talk radio every day.
A little Rush Limbaugh.
Dude,
Rush
yeah.
Limbaugh.
Rush and Hannity and
yikes.
And I'll say, see that it's so unfortunate with labels, because I can say, I'm a blank. Well, I know what that term means to me, but then once it's out of my mouth and it's turned over to someone else, then they're just deciding whether or not they need to discard me or not.
Right.
Okay, well, you're on the right team, you're on the wrong team, I'll throw you away. So, I will accept and use the term anarchist or volunteerist. And I know what it means to me, but to someone else, they'll hear anarchy and they think of these Antifa nitwits that are throwing rocks through buildings. Well, that's inaccurate. But once I say it out loud, and liberal, conservative, socialist, fascist, people throw terms around that they really don't know what they mean, because there is a difference between socialism, communism, and fascism. And, but it's anybody I don't like is a fascist, Nazi, commie, blank, blank, blank.
Yeah.
And so what I have found the most unfortunate through all this is the tribalism. Just,
That's a good term for it.
I mean, because I was, what was I, 25 years old when 9/11 happened, right? And I'm on my way to Baltimore, Washington International with a load of pipe on a flatbed. And I'm going up 79 out of Charleston when 9/11 happens. And I remember stopping and I called my dispatcher and I said, of course, payphone, no cell phone, right? And I'm like, hey, so they're like blowing up New York City. I'm not all that sure about going to Baltimore. She's like, just find a place shut down and we'll figure it out tomorrow. And that next day driving into Baltimore, it was American flags on every overpass. And it was just people showing compassion toward one another, and the R's and the D's and the blues and the reds, they like behaved themselves. They're singing God Bless America all hand in hand, kumbaya. And it really took about almost a year before blue and red started snipping each other. Dude, it didn't take 30 seconds with this stuff here,
Oh, not at all. Yeah.
And here I am now. I'm going, okay, wait. I'm watching businesses go bankrupt. I'm watching people wonder where their next meal's going to come from. I'm watching people's lives get turned upside down. And I don't give a damn about your popularity contest that's coming in November. I don't care. I don't care whose fault it was. I don't care where it came from. None of that matters to me right now. I don't care if it was China, if it wasn't China. I don't care if it's 5G. I don't care if none of that matters. What matters to me is people's lives are being destroyed. And who knows, there's non-governmental agencies all over the globe saying, guys, this lockdown is going to starve 300 million people. I don't know if they're being, I don't know if that's hyperbole. I don't know.
Right.
But what if it is? What if 300 million people will die not because of the virus, because of the reaction to the virus? And if you try to even have that conversation, the tribalists come out of the woodwork and they're, why do you hate old people and people over profits? And they just repeat these things. And, God help you if you question the experts, and it's just so sad and unfortunate. But, dude, I got 3 kids. Now, of course, homeschooled, so they've been home, right? But all these kids that have been at school and now they're home and they're watching this go down and they're watching their parents work through this, because people are having discussions, maybe stuff they won't say out loud in public, but they're talking and going, okay, but really, what is it? How's this generation going to respond?
No, and that's a great question. Let me ask you this, in line with that. So with the tribalism, how do you go about constructive talk, constructive conversation? Because Carl Younger, he wrote a book called Tribe, and it was basically, it talked about that tribalism. There's a thing that happens in a human's mind when they're pushed into a corner and they have to react. And that's seemingly what's happened here, because, I asked my dad when this happened, and he's 70 years old. He said, John, I've never lived through anything like this. He said, basically, pretend that you haven't and then act accordingly. That was his advice. And I think that was pretty sage wisdom. Just pretend that you're carrying it around and you don't want anybody else to get it. And I feel like that's fair. Hence the mask. Hey, I'll protect my family. I want to also protect you. That's the way I'm looking at it. But so what happens after that? And again, we don't know the numbers. We have one side of the story saying, everything's fine. This is ridiculous. And then you have another side saying, there's not a deep enough cave to hide in. We're all going to die. And I know that we're all going to be murdered by this virus. So, hey, Ben. Sorry, my son's out here.
All right.
So I guess my question is, because that's what I do, like say on Facebook, that's where I've really come to know you, is I tried to keep a logical perspective. And I also, one of my buddies, who does he does some criminal stuff. He basically said, don't say anything on Facebook that won't hold up in court. That was what he told me. So, I'm always super diplomatic, and I'm diplomatic for that reason also, because, thoughts aren't really who we are, Chris. Our actions are who we are. So,
Right.
I could have a thought that says, oh, Chris, that Polk, he doesn't get it. You know what I mean? He's so full of himself, or he's so right wing, or he's so left wing, and I'm going to tell him about it right now. Yeah. And then 10 minutes later, I've done forgot about it, and none of it matters. And, something happened. Your kid hit a pinata and candy came out. Nobody cares. So it's the actions that matter. So, that's where I'm at on it. Is I don't know how to react because I don't have enough solid information. And until I know enough solid information, with all that, I do know economy has to get going. I do know that people need to be safe and intelligent about their next move. Now you deliver, so you deliver product, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you don't do a lot of in-person contact and all that, right?
Oh yeah, I unload. I'm in the store, I'm in the trailer, because I have to unstrap the window. The windows are strapped to the sides of my trailer, and I have to go in there, unstrap them, carry them to the back. So I've had the same customer since 2014. So, first name basis, we talk about our kids. I go into these same stores every week, and to a man, everybody's fed up, and the first week we got the notice from the governor of Pennsylvania that my customers had to shut down. I made alternate plans. So I took a load to Texas. And so, I'm looking around, I'm just trying to see, like, your observation about speeding tickets and all that stuff. I'm just looking around and I'm like, okay, so how do I reconcile what I see? Because, when I look out the windshield and when I interact with people at the truck stop or at the shipper or the receiver, I have to somehow equate that with what I'm being told. So I go to Texas. I drive through Lexington, Nashville, Memphis, Little Rock. I get to Dallas. And the only thing missing is the big traffic jam, the early morning and the late afternoon. But otherwise, it's unchanged. People are out moving around. And I go to this, in the truck stop in the morning. It's raining. And they won't let you sit at the chairs, right? So I go inside to get some breakfast, and they've got a picnic table outside that the drivers are allowed to sit at. And so but it's raining, right? So I'm in the line at the Burger King, and I'm getting my biscuit or whatever, and I look around, I'm like, crap, there's nowhere to sit. So I pull my phone out of my pocket and I order a shower, and I'm like, I'm a genius. I'm going to just eat in the shower. Can't stop me. And I look down, it's a 38-minute wait for a shower.
Oh no, somebody already thought of it.
And I'm like, okay. So I walk down the hallway and I sat in the floor. I sat in the floor, John, in a pandemic and ate my breakfast. And
sorry, the way you said it, like in a pandemic, like,
yeah, I'm eating my burrito in the floor, and people are just walking by and they're like looking down at me. And so over this 7 or 8 weeks, I've been in 11 states. I've been in Chicago, Columbus, and Indianapolis, and Albany, and I've talked to people, and I've made a point to like have that conversation, be like, hey buddy, what do you think?
Right.
To that extra, what are you thinking? I know what I'm thinking, but I really want to know what you're thinking.
So
And
what have you found with those people? Like when you ask people what their general thoughts are, because I'm also a talker and I'm also a connector. What's the general purview of what they're saying to you? Like, are they worried or are they just kind of seeing their way through it? Or
well, I'll probably try to edit this out later, but I'm going to give you a direct quote. So I got this customer that I've gone to for years, right? And same guy that unloads me every time. And this was probably 3 weeks ago, Pennsylvania. And no masks. This is probably a week or two before the governor ordered the masks. And and I've got like a 45 window order, big order.
oh
We're
wow,
unloading.
yeah,
And I said, so how's business? And he goes, man, ain't slowed down a bit. Motherfuckers won't stay home, And I thought,
yeah, yeah.
that's
That was the general that was a general consensus. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
no,
That
it's
was a
fine.
general consensus when I went to get my oil changed, like, I don't know, a week and a half, 2 weeks into it. Well, I don't change my own oil. Like
Right.
we decide what our time's worth, and that we go accordingly, right? So to
Mhm.
me, I go and get my oil changed. It's much quicker. They got the stuff there. Hey, that's why they're in business. That's why. Okay, so it's a service, and that's a similar. Dude said that to me, and it kind of made me like feel bad for going to get my oil changed, but at the same time, like, hey, bro, we all got to kind of make it, don't we? Like, we can do this from. But then we really shift as a herd, because now
Right.
this past week, and you've seen it as well as I have, Home Depot, Lowe's, the stores, they're crushing. Like if I had stock money, I would put it all in that and be like, oh, let's ride these horses, because they were sold out of paint racks today, Chris. Paint racks. The rollers, the actual, metal
Yeah.
frames. Yeah, I'm sorry, frames. But I was like, where are the frames? They're like, we sold out this past weekend. I'm like, you all sold out of frames? Like, that's how, people are like, hey, let's be careful, but our trip will be okay because I've got to do some stuff at the house.
Yeah.
So it's interesting how that's all changed
Well, it's
from the beginning
it,
to now.
I'm not a hate Walmart guy, right? There's a lot of people that they despise Walmart or Target or big box stores in general, and they have all these lists of reasons.
Right.
Whatever. It's a store. If you don't want to work there, don't go work there, right?
It's fair.
But it's bothering me more and more as every passing day goes by that these small businesses are being crushed, being put out of business. You can't go one-on-one, get your hair cut by another human, but go ahead and run on over to the Home Depot and the Walmart with 100 other people. Don't go to church. Don't go to the restaurant, and
right.
And then you have this bizarre, Governor, Buford T. Justice changed his order around to where we can have outdoor dining. And I told my wife, because our anniversary was this past weekend.
Oh yeah.
And I said, we're going to a restaurant, right? If we got to drive to Georgia, and it was 437 miles to a Longhorn Steakhouse in Dalton, and that's where we were headed. And then
Did you end up
Buford
going to
changed.
Georgia?
Huh?
Did you end up going to Georgia?
No.
Oh, okay.
We would have. I'd have been a lot less pissed off.
Sorry, I didn't mean to
So a couple of days after that, Buford changed the order and would allow outdoor dining. And I told my wife, I'm like, fireside, because they've got that big room with those garage doors. And I thought, perfect. Cut off from the rest of the restaurant, got big garage doors, open air, got restrooms in the back, whole separate restroom deal back there. I called Fireside on Tuesday and I'm like, hey, anniversary, dinner coming. What's the story? She says, no, don't worry about it. Come on down. Get here between 3 and 5. Won't be busy. So we go down there, walk in the door, and she's like, do you have a to-go order? And I'm like, no, we're eating here. And she was like, well, I thought, here we go. The ABC commission showed up 2 hours prior to that and run everybody off.
ABC.
So the owner had a conversation with a local county official. No problem. Your outdoor thing is fine. And then some thug from Charleston comes down, and there's people in the restaurant eating, and he runs them off and threatens to take his license. And from what I hear, the guy was a jerk about it. And, so my wife has a video on her phone right now of me calling the ABC supply or ABC people and telling them exactly what it is I think of them. If the governor's going to be king, which is how they're behaving, separate but equal branches, checks and balances, Constitution, that's all out, because somewhere in West Virginia, there must be a cave where all of the elected representatives have gathered to hide,
Yeah.
And so everybody's waiting for the governor to say, okay, well, here's the next step. And then we go to the next step, and here comes some jackass that just I've never met the guy, but I've got a picture of him in my mind. He's about 5'9", 5'10". He's got him a little short man syndrome going on. And he wants to show everybody what a badass he is by going in and shutting down the restaurant.
Hey, first of all, Chris, that's very hurtful because I'm 5'9" as well. Okay.
Oh, sorry about that.
Yeah. So settle down. Settle down.
5'7", 5'7".
No, I get your point, and I've ran into that ilk myself on jobs where, we're doing our thing, like everything's copacetic, and we're always above board anyway. But then, I think the problem to me is when I get that there's a need for a job that somehow government's created where they check on people to make sure that they're not dumping pollutants in the stream. That's fair. But then when they come at you with the same kind of hostility, like you're doing that before that's even proven, and that's where I see that point is, why does that man feel the need to do that unless he just is bored and wants to flex authority? And we have that problem. You look at law enforcement, for instance. How many of those guys were bullied, or now they got themselves to a position where they can be the bully? I wonder, because I know a bunch of law enforcement guys, and some of them are that way and some of them are not that way. Some of them are well thought, and they're doing it for the right reason. They want to be a helper. They want to help the situation. So yeah, that's strange to me. So
I know a guy that has had a fairly close relationship with law enforcement guys, and he made this amazing statement, and he's like, if you get them one-on-one, they're one way, but when they're grouped, it's kind of a different story. And that's why I think in part of this PR problem that law enforcement's had over the last few years is they'll have one that goes and just does something heinous and terrible, and they won't get rid of him.
No.
And then we've got the guy, I don't know if you've seen this yet, but last week there was a law enforcement officer in Washington that made the video from his car, in his cruiser. And he's like, look, I was in Fallujah or wherever it was, and I can't enforce, and I won't enforce unconstitutional orders that violate someone's freedom. They fired him. He's out,
Yeah.
The video dropped like 6 hours ago, and I'm thinking, you want me to have that faith,
right,
in the state, the system. You want me to, thank them for their service and all this, that, and the other.
Why you pay taxes, right? Yeah.
Yeah, with a gun to your head. And, but then you allow them to behave in a way and won't hold them account as individuals because there's a human behind that badge and inside that uniform. And that human is capable of flaw. But, oh, well, he's got a uniform, a badge, and a gun. And so, well, he's not capable of flaw. And I'm like, that's wrong. Because if a truck driver runs over a minivan and kills 6 people, I don't say, well, he's a part of the brotherhood, I got to protect him. I'm like, no, he's a dirtbag. Get rid of him.
Right.
And I saw a local politician puts this big thing on Facebook about, you better, you pull in the driveway and you get out of your car and you strip naked and you go straight to the shower and you scrub yourself from head to toe. And I'm thinking, that's irresponsible. You're putting a fear-based mandate on people that's illogical, for one. There's no scientific evidence anywhere along this has told us I need to strip naked in the driveway and go in the house, straight to the shower. And
yeah, that's fair.
And so it's really troubling at a lot of people's responses to this. So you'd say I got pulled over in Winfield yesterday. You're talking about not people not getting pulled over. He got me. I've got a 33-year-old pickup sitting in a driveway that's been sitting there for 2 years, and I needed to go to the dump. Well, the DMV's closed. And I'm like, well, it's got a plate. It's dead. It's got a sticker. It's dead. So I went to the dump. And I get 3 miles from the house. Whoop, and, he pulls me over. He's like, your tag's been dead for 2 years. And I'm like, yeah, it has. And I'm like, DMV's closed. What do you want me to do? Well, just take it home and don't drive it no more till it's legal. Okay, Barney.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and they're doing what they can. It reminds me of what you were saying. Like, it's almost like the Catholicism. Like they'll get rid of. They don't know where to take them. But to your last point, when people are doing stupid things, instead of the thin blue line and being like, why don't they just say no, this won't do? You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't matter if you're part of us or not. That was dumb, and this is dumb actions get dumb prizes. Stupid questions get stupid prizes. So,
well, think about this. Do you follow car racing at all? NASCAR?
A little bit.
Kyle Larson, you know that name?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, so he gets fired here a couple of weeks ago because he said a N-word on a live stream. Okay, that just made me. This guy is probably in the top 20 of most talented human beings on planet Earth right now when it comes to driving a race car. And he said a word he shouldn't have said, and he's gone. They didn't.
How did he say
it? Huh?
How did he say it? Did he say it like in anger? Like what was the intent?
Well, there was never any audio of it released, but it sounded like he said it the way like the rappers and stuff say it.
Okay.
That way.
The reason I asked that is like George Carlin had a great bit, and he just basically he said every negative thing you could say to about every different category of skin. I mean, whether it be Jewish, Black, Irish, Italian, it doesn't matter. He just went through this list. And his point was, none of that matters unless the intent is bad. Those are all just words that monkeys make with their mouth. Okay.
Right.
Now,
right.
Which one of those, what does it convey? Like when you say it hatefully, okay, that's one.
Yeah.
But if you're saying it in conversation, or if you're, and we've become thought police, a cancel culture where, it's to the point to me, Chris, where, and I'm trying to get my people, the people I consider my close inner family, like I'm trying to get them to understand that just because you say a bad thing or you do a bad thing, or if you don't leave somebody a way out, why would they want to get out? Why would they want to? Why would I want to prove to you, Chris, that I'm a good person? And if I've offended you, if I've upset you, if you don't give me a way out, well, why would I want to try to get out? You're obviously, you don't want me to get out. You want me to be put in my place, and you want me to stay there forever. That's illogical. And not only that, I grew up in the church. They don't hit. Jesus ain't about that. Jesus was love. He's about caring and understanding. And sure, you can mess up, but for goodness sakes, give somebody a way out of the situation. It's okay that we upset each other, but there ought to be a way that we mend that error. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
Anyways, that's what's happening a lot too.
I think it's interesting with this situation with Larson. You or I could say that word and make somebody mad, but we don't have enough to lose for it really to matter. But in that case, when it happens, and it's society has deemed that the unforgivable, and then it takes $20 million a year to run a race car. And so when McDonald's and Credit One Bank or whoever it was tells the car owner, well, he's either he's gone or we're gone. Well, I can tell you how that conversation is going to go. Right. Doesn't matter how much I like you, brother. They got $20 million and you got zero. So, yeah. But when it's made me wonder. These celebrities. And I'm not a celebrity hater. I don't care if you got $1 trillion. It doesn't matter to me. But I think some of the behavior, I kind of understand. They have so much to lose. Yeah. I mean, they've got these $1 million mansions, and they got cars, and they got clothes, and they don't want to give that up. So if you want to bag on celebrities because they're not fighting like Mel Gibson in The Patriot or whatever, I don't know that I can fault them really. Or if they're hiding,
right. To their sponsors. Right.
It's not very far from my nose to the ground. If I fall and I fail, but when you're at that status, and I don't really forgive them if they're really pushing the narrative and pushing the agenda. But if they're sitting in their house being quiet, or playing the guitar for people to whatever. But I've watched a lot of, because I'm a big NASCAR guy, and I've listened to these podcasts, and I heard a guy the other day, he's our age. He's a spotter. And he's like, man, I ain't left my house since March 18th. And I'm thinking,
what?
Yeah, and and it's all of them, they're like, well, yeah, we're staying home. I mean, we're taking precautions, and we're wearing masks. And, guy sends a box over to the house, and I sprayed it down with Lysol before I brought it in. And it's like living in two universes. I hear these people telling me about their lives, and their lives are, I've not seen anybody but my next door neighbor in 7 weeks. I haven't gone anywhere. One guy's talking about, I go into the grocery store, I've got a hood up, I've got a mask on, eyes down, focus on the prize, get my list, get my stuff, get out. That's not been my experience at the grocery store. I'm walking in, I ain't got a mask, I'm waving at people, I'm having conversations, So to see them.
You're spreading this shit around, man. Don't you realize this? You're part of the problem, bro. With your,
I guess
with
so.
your happy nature, go lucky situation. You're the reason my grandma died. I'm kidding.
Yeah.
I'm kidding. It's
right.
a joke.
Yeah.
But that's the other side of that. I've noticed too, Chris. Sorry.
No,
I've noticed too that there's if you're well-to-do, or not well-to-do, if you're doing good enough where you can stay at home or telework and money's coming in, I've noticed that people use that as a little bit of a prop to be like, hey, you're not social distancing. Versus, I mean, my men, we don't have that. We can't telework. You can't build a retaining wall from telework. You know what I mean? Like, you have to go and do the thing that is required to do. And I don't, I'm not saying that that's bad. That I'm saying check that privilege and say, okay, put yourself, empathy. That's what I'm saying. Use a little bit of empathy.
Absolutely.
Use a little bit of empathy and say, okay, Well, if I was in John's position, the only reason I can make money is if I go and put my hands on things. I make things nice and look pretty, but I need my hands at the job, and I've got to go and leave the house to do that. And I'm going to do that, as carefully as I can, because I get their point too. I'm trying to use empathy all the way around, but yeah, I follow you. I think those people you're talking about where the celebrity, just like what was the race car driver's name?
Larson.
Sorry. Larson. Yeah, so he wears his sponsors around on his jacket. He like that's what he does. Those other guys, the talk show hosts, those are all advertisements, right? So, the minute they misstep, that's one of the reasons I like those podcasts is if they don't care. You know what I mean? Like Rogan doesn't care. Tim Pool doesn't care. Like if you don't line up with him, he's going to keep saying it, and the advertisements just keep coming in and the listeners keep coming in because they're just speaking truth. They're just talking,
Yeah.
which is good. And I like this. I'm glad you're doing this.
Well, and that's part of the reason I wanted to do this is because you and I will never be celebrities. We'll never have that brand.
Not with that attitude. Yeah.
But we have experience. Okay. So here's an example of two guys that didn't have an opportunity to phone it in. I had to go drive the truck. I had to go get out of the trailer. I had to go interact with people. Okay. So now that I've done that and I come back, I mean, dude, think about 1997 when I started driving a truck. I had a box of cassette tapes and CB radio, and now we got this literal instantaneous connection to the world. And so you think about how if it wasn't for the technology, okay, and I would leave on Sunday evening and my wife or kids wouldn't hear from me until Friday, right? And I come back in Friday and they'd be like, so what did you see? And I could report, well, I saw this and I saw this and I saw this and I saw this. And they say, but on the TV. And I'm like, well, that's not what I saw, right? But we've created a situation in the society where if it doesn't come through the magic box on the wall, well, it doesn't count. And I'm thinking, no. John has experience in life as a dad, as a husband, as a businessman, as a servant. That experience counts and it's important. And I don't care that it doesn't come through the special box on the TV that makes the flashy noises and the
flashy noises.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like it.
And that's what's so disheartening is that people, I can say, well, here's what I saw. Well, that's not what they said on the news. And I'm like, I don't much give a damn what they said on the news. I always say it's news. It's not news. It's propaganda. And so your experience in business and in life is important. And that's why I wanted to do a project like this to let people have the conversation, to speak from that experience. Because, and I would love, my dad was a kind of jack of all trades, and built 3 houses and remodeled every one we ever lived in. And, and he could do tile. And my brain short circuits when I look at somebody doing tile. And I'm thinking, well, I could learn. I could learn and do it myself, but then I have to make that calculation. All right, well, how much time is it going to take me to learn it? And then who's going to fix it when I screw it up? And I have to make all this calculation. I'm like, well, I'm just going to hire John because John's an expert, a real bona fide expert. And he can come in here. Not only can he do the job in 1/10 of the time that it would take me, but it's going to be beautiful, and that whole thing about, well, the expert said this and the expert said that. And I'm thinking, y'all, I've been dealing with experts in the trucking business for a long time, and most of them are morons. You know?
Don't they have a bunch of credentials though?
Oh, they do. They got more degrees than a thermometer, and don't have enough sense to come in out of the damn rain. That's.
Yeah, I do know that. Yeah, that's funny as hell. That's good stuff. Hey, so yeah,
Go ahead.
I've never driven a big rig. How many gears that thing got?
Ours are 10 speeds.
10 speeds. So
Yeah.
10 gears.
10 gears.
There you go.
Yeah.
And do they double? Like, is it 1 through 10 or is it 1 through 20?
1 through 10. So you got your reverse is up to the left, right? Not back to the right, like in a car. So your reverse is up and right, and then your 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, flip the switch and go back through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 again.
I got you. Okay. Yeah. So there you go. Yeah. No idea. You put me in one of those, I'm burning that transmission out. That's what's happening. And be like, hey, John, I need you to take this towel over to Iowa. And I'll be like, sure. Come and replace his transmission immediately. Because that's what's got to happen. Yeah. So there you go. All's fair.
We grew up in West Virginia, coal country,
Yeah.
And I remember growing up, and there would be a story on the news, coal company had this many violations, or there would be something like Upper Big Branch would happen, and then the news would, they had all these violations. Well, trucking taught me that violations are not necessarily that you did anything wrong. And it's been, what is this, 2020? It's been 8 years since I had a side of the road rubber glove inspection on my truck, where they get under and measure everything and check everything.
Oh, that's what that means.
Okay. Yeah. The top level roadside inspection. 8 years. Think about that. Think about how many miles I've driven in 8 years, and I've had one major inspection.
Wow.
Okay. So the guy gets done, and technically my truck passed. There were no violations. But he said, well, I've got some things I need to show you. And I had an airline that literally had a scuff mark on it. And he was like, okay, you need to watch that. I'm like, okay. And another airline had a scuff mark on it, and it was touching the catwalk between the truck and the trailer. So you need to watch that. And I'm like, okay. And I didn't even know on the mud flaps on the back, there's supposed to be this metal reflective thing, and one side didn't have it. And he's like, well, you're missing a reflective conspicuity, something other. Okay, no problem. Warning. Okay, fine. Technically passed the inspection. But they've got this system called CSA 2010 that when you get a warning, it's points. And so I got 29 points, right? Well, because they're warnings, you can't go to court because you weren't convicted of anything, right? So then they've got this weighting system. And so it doubles the points for so long, and then they cut in half, and they do the hokey pokey, and they turn them, and
oh, Jesus.
And so it's this big thing, right? And of course, the more points you have, it affects your driving record and the carrier's driving record and all this stuff. So, and there's no way to fight it, even if they're wrong. And so the last time I had a roadside, the cop, I had a light out, and he's like, I'm going to write you a warning. I'm like, no, write me a ticket. And he was like, why would you do that? I said, because if you write me a citation, I can go to find a lawyer, pay the lawyer $200. The lawyer will go to the judge. I'll pay the $50 fine, and it'll go away. But if you write me a warning, it will follow me for 5 years. Right? So
that's reasonable.
So,
yeah,
and of course the cop looks at you like you've got 3 heads. Why wouldn't you want a warning? And I'm thinking, you don't understand this? You're the guy in charge of writing the tickets.
No.
So many of these violations are such bullshit There's such little trivial things that literally have nothing to do with real safety.
Right.
Now, what it does do is it takes guys like me and loads us up with points so they can get rid of us and replace us with a driver that costs half as much. Because guess what? Brand new drivers with no experience have 0 points. You know?
Oh yeah. Yeah. No, I'm sure there's a reason for their game, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, so I'm still really hopeful about the immediate future and the future that our kids are going to see. You know, my kids are 5, 10, and 13. And I have a lot of hope for what these kids are watching right now. And I mean, my 10 and 13-year-old are asking some really cool questions right now.
Nice. Yeah.
You know, and they're talking to their friends, and you know, we're seeing these 17 to 20-year-olds that are kind of looking around and they're thinking and they're seeing because they weren't trained to watch the news like we were. You know, they just don't have that programming like we did.
Chris, I haven't watched the news. I think we had a discussion via some kind of text, but I haven't watched the news. And dude, I mean, I actually tuned into like a news program probably since high school. I mean, like, so late 90s, you know, it never really, it's national media has always been a bit of bullshit. You know, to me, they've always been a bit of NASCAR. It's like they tell me what they want to see. They're shooting me the advertising. Like, here's a big flashy lights. You know what I mean? But what I will say to what you were saying, I've got a 10 and 8 and a 6-year-old, and I tell them all the time, this is the best time as far as I know of. We're living in the best time in history ever. I mean, hot water, electricity, air conditioning. I mean, name it. Netflix during a pandemic. Get the fuck out of here, dude. It could not be any better than it is right now, even during a pandemic. Even during the pandemic. You know, like, so I want to take those and I'm gonna make sure that they know that those exist, but then we're gonna build on those, you know, and also, figure out the bullshit. Let's suss that out. Let's figure that out together and say, okay, you're a right wing guy, I'm a left wing guy. Okay, let's suss it out together. There's a middle ground. We know there is. And then we'll get to that and we'll make sure the kids know that. And then they can have their own arguments on down the line. And that'll be great. But in the meantime, the more talking, the more conversations that we have, the more open-ended, and in my opinion, the empathy. That's got to be a big thing. You know, you need to understand me and I need to understand you. We don't come from the same place, even though we came from the same place. You go about it one way, I go about it another way. And we can meet about it in the middle, talk about it, and sort it out. And that's not a big deal. And I don't think it should be a big deal. There doesn't have to be a winner. We're not our thoughts. We're our actions. So, you know, if we're going to be dicks to each other, that's one thing. But if we're going to have different thoughts, that's another. So that's okay to me. And that's where I want to end up in the whole thing is, you know, we can get along to get along.
I draw the line at force. And that's the one thing I'm thankful that the volunteerist anarchist philosophy gave me.
I like that, by the way. You shared that with me, and I like that.
Yeah.
And I'd like to conclude that. You go ahead, and then I want to conclude too, because I don't know how that ends.
So, if I am presented with a problem, okay, anarchist, I am presented with a problem, and I reach in my pocket, and I pull out I have my list of potential solutions to the problem. Force is not on there. Coercion, aggression, and force. I can't. That tool has been removed from my toolbox. I've got to use persuasion. I've got to use, you know, some sort of exchange. I'll do this if you do that, or
better reasoning.
Or I've just got to say, okay, well, I'm out. You know, I can't do the deal. I can't be a part of this, or I can't, you know. And so the kind of core of that, it's libertarian, anarchist, volunteerist thing is the non-aggression principle. You can do whatever you want to do so long as you are not committing an act of coercion or violence against someone else. And so a friend of mine, the other day, she's like, well, my freedom ends where yours begins. And I'm like, no, because I don't have a right to invade your property. So your property and my property meet, and we can come to a voluntary mutual agreement. But my property ends where your property begins. But my liberty and my freedom is something I was born with, and it's inalienable. It can't be even given away, And so I draw the line at force. I don't care how good your idea is, I don't care how compassionate you think you are. If it involves putting a gun to somebody's head, I'm out. If it involves, because you're not going to go in the closet and get your own gun, you're not going to do that. So if you're not going to do that, then therefore you cannot go find a gang that does have guns and a monopoly on violence to go act on your behalf to go stick the gun up to somebody's head. That's as far as it will go for me.
I like that. That's well put. I got a story that correlates that sentiment. So we're up at we got a cabin up on the Greenbrier River, and it's July 4th weekend, and people are having a good time. We're doing a bunch of work at the cabin, and I've got an uncle. He's a real right-wing guy, kind of, and we come out in the morning, 6 a.m, and there's a four-wheeler parked by my truck, and in my truck there's a hippie in the passenger seat.
A hippie.
A hippie. I say hippie. When I say hippie, what I mean is long hair, may have been getting into some mushrooms and some weed and possibly moonshine, and couldn't make it all the way home along the river. Anyways, and I know this hippie. I don't know him by name, but I know his eyes. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So, dude's like, my uncle's like, hey, we got to call the law. I'm like, whoa. He's curled up in the passenger seat. He just found some a place to crash,
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, he's in my truck. Hold on a second, I open up the door. Dude's all curled up. I'm like, hey bud, how you doing? He's like, oh man. He's like, am I at Lums? I said, no, you're not at Lums. I said, were you on your way to Lums? And he says, yeah. Oh, he says, man, Earl showed up with some moonshine, and he gave us the story of how his four-wheeler got there and all this. And then he asked for a water. I gave him a water, and he went on his way. But I just thought to myself, man, now that could have gone two ways. We could have called the state police, had to come down to do something that we weren't willing to do in our first place, which is exactly right. Because I didn't care. He didn't hurt anything. Yeah. He was looking for a warm place to stay. Body warmth inside a cab of a truck makes sense. So that's what we did. And it was like, and he's on his way. And I kind of look at my uncle like, we got a 30-year age gap. I'm like, man, really? That was the move? You're gonna call somebody in to do something that you weren't willing to do in the first place? Come on, fella.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, that's not how you handle these things. You say, oh, okay, a little bit of empathy. Oh, had a rough night. He didn't have to work at 6 a.m. He wasn't up here to do this thing. He was having a good time. Found himself in the wrong place. That's okay. That's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've been there many times.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, there's times and, you wake up and like, where's my pants and where's my truck? And if I can find one of the two of those, I'm good for another day. And
I'm golden. Oh, yeah. My keys. Yeah. Great.
Yeah. Well, I found it hysterical when they started doing the shutdowns and stuff, and they had the big signs on the interstate that the Hatfield McCoy Trail was closed. And I'm thinking, do you honestly believe you're going to keep a bunch of hillbillies out of the woods? I mean,
Yeah,
Do
when
you
gas is
really?
as cheap as it is, get the
Oh
hell out of it.
yeah, man.
Yeah,
Which, by the way, we were talking about oil
give me
changes a while
gasoline.
ago,
Yeah,
and I had bought some parts, and my wife's like, "Well, the van needs oil change." And I'm like, "Okay." So I walk back in there, and I go to get a 5 quart bucket of Pennzoil, and it was like $50. And I'm like, hadn't somebody got the memo that like oil's like minus $37 a barrel?
yeah,
And
yeah. $0. They're like, no, no, no. This is first in, first out. No, no, this is the
well, you
same.
love this. So I go to get my oil. I take it today to get the oil changed. And I went to that little place down in Tays Valley. It used to be a Pennzoil, now it's a Valvoline. And I roll up
Yeah.
in there, and the guy's like, "Hey, man, your oil drain plug's all stripped out." I'm thinking, thanks, Walmart, because I'm looking at the sticker. Walmart was the last one that had it. And they're like, "Well, we can try to get it out." I'm like, "Well, go ahead." And so they get that done. And then he goes to pull we've got one of these Chrysler vans where the oil filter's on top, and it's got a little cartridge deal. And on top of that, there's a spring in there with a little valve so that when you stick the filter down in there, it activates the valve so that if the oil filter gets too full, it will let the oil flow. Well,
No,
apparently
release.
Walmart
Okay.
broke it, 3 months ago. And so we've been driving a van around with no oil filter essentially because it just,
Right.
and, and the guy was like, "Well, you want to go to Walmart and have them fix it?" I'm like, "Nope, because Walmart's auto place is closed because of the pandemic. It's the one
No,
area of Walmart that's not making $1 billion a day."
not only that, they're the first place that messed it up. Yeah, so
Oh,
I'll take it
yeah.
right back to them. Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, no thanks. I won't be doing any more of that. On back to the anarchy thing and just cooperation, it, this, to me, should teach us or give us an opportunity to teach people these people that I'll never meet that order these doors, windows, and cabinets. They don't go order those doors and windows and cabinets so the truck driver can have a job. The truck driver is the furthest thing from their mind when the wife looks at the husband and says, "I need new cabinets."
Right. Yeah,
She
that's
don't
very
say,
true.
"I need new cabinets" so that the truck driver can have a job or so that the guys in the plant can have a job. They buy that stuff because they need it. And then when they do, I benefit from that. And I make a great living. I make a way above average living as a driver because of these relationships that I have made directly with these shippers, right?
Hmm.
The,
Yeah.
the, it would be one thing if I didn't have that relationship, but I do. And so through all of this, my rates never changed. The whole trucking economy is collapsing all around me, but my rate's not affected because my 6-year relationship has made sure that they kept me in business because their customers have kept them in business and their customers have kept them in business. And the cooperation and the spontaneous order of the market,
Hmm.
but we're taught to believe in the man behind the curtain. We're taught to believe in the wizard of the state that, if you don't get the right president, if you don't have the right governor, it's all going on. I'm thinking,
Yeah.
guys, in my conscious life, I've been through 4 presidents now, and I figured out pretty quick that it really don't make a damn which one of them's in power.
It really does.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know,
I mean, you want it to be so. People want it to be so. They want to say, and me too. I want to say that. Well, if I agree with this guy and vote him in, that there's going to be some progressive agenda pushed forward. That drugs are going to be legalized, and people will be able to make their own decisions. And then other people want to say, oh well, if I get this guy in, they're going to ban abortion. None of that's going to happen. It's not going to happen. To me, it's almost become, it's like it's the same power structure, and they give you 2 different banners just to get you to give you a semblance of maybe there is a choice, and
Mhm.
maybe there just isn't, you know. But also, I do question this. So on the anarchy level, or on the voluntarism level, so what happens when? Because this is where I'm trying to make ends meet. So let's say that we do away with government, we do away with that. Does it not all just rise back to the top at some point where, you know, okay, we have an infrastructure of roads, we have an infrastructure of these things, and at some point there's going to have to be an agreement between all of us where we say, okay, yeah, well, me and Chris, we're power players, and we can pave the roads, but we're not going to pave them all the time. It's you're going to have to pay your fair share, and then you're right back into taxes. You're right back into all that stuff. Like I like the idea, but at the end of the day, is it not the same principle as if you gave 10 people $100,000? At the end of the day, one or two of them are going to have a lot more money. One of them, two, are going to have not very much money, and then six or seven will have kept their bell curve of money. You know what I mean? They I don't see how at the end of the day it doesn't shake out the way it's shaked out. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I agree. I think the American experiment was the first really in human history to kind of give self government a shot.
Yeah.
But when you look at U.S. history in context, they pretty much trampled the Constitution before the ink was really even dry. I mean, even Thomas Jefferson, who literally wrote the Declaration of Independence, becomes president and starts acting like a tyrant. Um,
Right.
and
That's what I'm saying. I mean, as soon as you give somebody that smell of blood, aren't they going to act like a shark?
yeah, well, I would highly recommend reading Thaddeus Russell's book, um, A Renegade History of the United States. I finished that book a week before the shit hit the fan with this virus, and I'm so glad I did, because he
That is
goes
true.
back through and he adjusts. He doesn't change anything. All he does is adjust the focus. That, for example, the colonists before the revolution were really a bunch of drunks, and they were up, cahooting and cavorting, and they were unruly. And uh, when the founders came later, uh, the people we recognize as the founders, they had a very Puritan model. They had a very well, this is how you should behave, and these are the things you should think about, and you shouldn't be having sex, and you shouldn't be drinking alcohol, and um, so throughout American history, there was always this little underbelly of renegades that wouldn't do what they were told, and it started with the African slaves. And after the slaves, it was the Italians and the Irish and the Jews and eventually Latinos. But they were always, or homosexuals. Um, there were, prostitutes, drunks, bootleggers. The people that are really responsible for the liberty that we have today is because there was always a group that couldn't be controlled,
Yeah.
and he made an example of the Stonewall Riots in 1969, that happened during a pandemic, by the way. You know, where there was a homosexual nightclub called the Stonewall,
I'm
and
familiar.
okay, and so they got tired, and they're like, you know what, we're not doing anymore. So they started throwing rocks at the cops, and the cops had to back down because there were half naked drag queens doing, what do they call the line where the kick line,
Cabaret.
well, yeah, throwing bottles at them, So one, there's that. Okay. There's that human spirit that just can't be trampled no matter how hard they try. But what I think we have to do is we have to recognize that it's not okay to give certain people special rights and allow them to use violence. If we could just harness that one thing, if we could harness the police violence, if we could harness, this aggression right now. Look, if the guy that owns Fireside Grill in Tays Valley wants to open and you don't want to go because you're scared, don't go.
Right. And if you do, go.
I'll go.
Right.
I would go tomorrow to a race at Bristol Motor Speedway with 169,999 friends without hesitation, without a mask, without gloves. With my feeling as it is right now, I would go attend an event with 170,000 other human beings piled in like cordwood with no hesitation.
Really? You wouldn't think anything of it?
Nah, no hesitation. Wow. None whatsoever. Is that dangerous? Maybe. But hell, I've done a lot of dangerous things in my life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting. It's interesting.
But listen, when people gather there, if there's a certain group of people on planet Earth that were of age between like 1992 and like 1995, and if they get together and there will be stories that started, hey, remember when Chris, and the stories begin like that, and the stupidity, especially behind the wheel of a vehicle, they can tell stories for days. Oh, no,
I'm copying. Yeah.
I should have been dead a long time ago. So there's one, that the spirit can never be crushed. There's two, we could dial a lot of it back if we would just decide that violence is really only acceptable in the most extreme cases of defending life.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Stopping somebody from jaywalking does not count.
Right.
Even chasing down the armed robber, and then when you stopped him, dragging him out of his car and kicking the shit out of him for 15 minutes, that doesn't count. You've got him, hook him up, take him to the hooscow, put him before the judge, and let the system run its course. You don't need to kick the shit out of this guy. That's unnecessary.
Right.
But we can't even have the conversation about drawing that line of saying, okay, your job's to serve and protect. Okay, then serve and protect. Or the guy, we've all forgotten about the guy in the U-Haul truck or the UPS truck, where the diamond thieves or whatever they were, and the cops are hiding behind motorists in their cars, using them as human shields while they turned that UPS truck into Swiss cheese.
I remember that.
But here, and I'll close it with this. We now have a technology available to us called blockchain. And I'm not going to get too deep in the woods here, but here's the bottom line. If you read the story of even Bill Gates, Steve Jobs, Steve Wozniak, Larry Ellison, a lot of those people that back in the mid 70s to mid 80s that propelled us up to this level where we're at now, all they did was reach around them and pick up pieces that were developed, a little bit of this and a little bit of that. And, ooh, look, I can take this and put these two together and I can do this. And, processors. Okay, well, if we put this and the circuits and the chips and, we got to write a language, and we write the language. And so now we're at this plateau now of technology. Now people will look around and, I'm going to pick up some of this and some of this, and, that's interesting, and let me put that in my pot and stir it up. What happened in 2008 in response to the financial crisis was a person or group of people, we'll never know, Satoshi Nakamoto, which may have been 10 people, it may have been one guy, no, but we'll never know. Okay. But they went, okay, we need something that'll keep this from ever happening again. And so they came up with this thing called blockchain and Bitcoin. And what if we had a currency that couldn't be manipulated, okay, and we also had a system of a ledger system that also could not be manipulated, the people in government and private that got together that created the conditions for this financial crisis, if we just had those two pieces, they couldn't have got away with this. People still would have had a currency to come to trade back and forth with, and people would have still had a system, a ledger, to verify all the transactions, but you couldn't have all these people, putting people into high risk mortgages and then bundling them together and then selling them,
Right. The middleman.
So blockchain and Bitcoin was born. Blockchain is a decentralized, immutable ledger that is present everywhere. Every computer on earth that has that blockchain software has a copy of it. So I've got a copy and you've got a copy and they've got a copy and there's a million copies. So when a block of information is set into that chain, it's everywhere all the time. So in order to change it, you've got to change it on every computer on earth. Right. And then when you put one block in behind another block, well, in order to change this block, you have to change these blocks too. So it becomes this system that allows us to trust people that we don't want to trust. Because think of it this way. If right now you and I had a method of communication and on a network that we both say, yes, that network is accurate. Okay, good. And then I put forth a proof of work that is my identity. And you're able to, okay, yep, that's him. And I look and say, yep, that's John. Okay, so here's John's history and here's Chris's history. And okay, Chris has a product that John wants. We execute a smart contract. Chris ships the product to John. John opens the box. Hey, it is what it is. Chris gets paid. Done. It's done. It's going to give us a process to do what the state does for us now: execute contracts, enforce contracts, verify identity. So we put up with a lot of bullshit from the state to get very necessary services like proof of identity, enforcing contracts, solving disputes. When, not if, when we as individuals move and merge slowly over to that blockchain network where we have a currency that also runs on that network that can't be inflated at a whim, here's $2 trillion. We just took it out of our pocket and stuck it in the left pocket. Thank us for our service. When we get there, and not only do they not have access to it, they can't see it because it's encrypted. So they can't see what we're doing and what we're sending. They can't touch it. They can't tax it. They can't regulate it. They can't tariff it. They're done.
Chris, where's your empathy for the Fed, man? I mean, don't those guys have to, what are they going to do for money?
Hookers and blow, man. Hookers and blow. That's, I guess that's what
drive a truck or lay foul. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Maybe their whole gig is just.
Listen, I will volunteer to teach Ben Bernanke how to drive a truck. Me and Ben one-on-one. I will teach him how to shift gears and say, here you go, Ben. Have at it, brother.
But his Ivy League school is not going to pay for that, is it? Maybe.
Well, let's say I'll donate it. I'll donate it.
Oh, nice. Hey, you know what? I'll kick him 10 hours a week myself. No problem.
Right.
No problem. Yeah, my Saturday.
If we look at Uber, we look at Uber and Lyft, which has revolutionized.
Oh, yeah.
Where someone already owns an asset. And have you seen this one called Roadie? Have you been seeing those ads? Is it
no.
Roadie?
What is it?
It's for pickup trucks. It's like an Uber for pickup trucks, right? So they just launched it in West Virginia, I guess. And you got a pickup truck and you can hire out your pickup truck just like an Uber, you know? So think about how cool that is. If you're on the job site and you need 6 bags of concrete, you know, whatever, you know, go pick it up.
Something a little heavier. Right.
Right. So, people being able to utilize that asset that they already have. And all we needed was someone to connect the need with the person that could provide for that need, you know? And I believe that blockchain will do away with brokers. Right now in the trucking industry, as we speak, because of this pandemic, the rates have crashed. And so everybody needs a boogeyman. They're ignoring the government for some reason. And so they've gone after brokers. And they're driving circles around Washington, D.C., and they want Trump to do this and do that. And we got to regulate the brokers. And they turn the brokers into this bad guy. Blockchain will make brokers go away. There will be no brokers. Because why? If you have a load of widgets that you need moved and you can contact me directly and know where I'm at and know what my capabilities are, why do you need a broker? Why do you need an intermediary or a middleman? You know, so.
And when did you become familiar with blockchain?
By accident, I guess. I don't remember. I started down this path in 2010. And so when I started questioning, I started looking for alternative sources. I think one of the first of those was a radio show called Free Talk Live. That might have been it. And I'm a kind of a tech nerd. So maybe listening to like This Week in Tech, you know, a podcast. But somewhere along the line, I'm like, well, that's interesting. What is that? And of course, you start Googling and you're like, okay, well, all right, I see what a Bitcoin is. But I really didn't start understanding blockchain until about 3 years ago. And then that light bulb went off. And there's actually a guy, his dad had started one of the big trucking companies, one of the largest in the country. And he caught scent of this. And so he's built a blockchain and transport authority so they're helping develop blockchain technology for trucking. I think we'll be the proving grounds. The trucking industry will prove how this technology works. And so it's just accidental, you know, because it all starts with asking questions. And that's the cardinal sin, you know? Well, how dare you? You don't question the authorities. How dare you?
Hey, can I travel? Can I travel with you?
Yeah, I think so.
Cool. Great. I'm listening.
It all begins to unravel if you start asking questions, you know? And so it's just one thing leads to another, and you're introduced to some piece of technology and then another piece. And then, you know, you watch a YouTube video and, they explained that. I get that now. And then it just, you know, and it spirals and cascades and on and on and on.
Yeah, snowballs.
Yeah. And it's such fascinating stuff. But we're just so covered with distractions these days of, you know, people wanting us to be terrified of everything but them.
Oh yeah.
You know,
well, fear, man. I wonder when did they figure out how well fear sold? I mean, obviously they had to, not obviously, but they had to really put their hands around fear and be like, we get out of them. You know what I mean? At some point, somebody came across that, like, and they said, you know what we'll do? We'll just tell them that, you know, because that's what I thought about when this whole situation happened. I was like, so they weren't sure what was going on. That's what, to me, they weren't sure what was going on. But they knew enough that they didn't know. So how could they get us to stop? You know, how do you get 360 million people to stop?
Right.
In their tracks. You know, that's the way I looked at it. Was, well, if they don't know, then we don't know, because we're at their beck and call. You know, they tell us they have all the information, right? So
Yeah.
if they have all the information and they say, hey, we really don't know what's going on here. If they're unsure, then we should be unsure. Yeah, I mean, do you think that was purposeful, or do you think they really didn't know, or you know what I'm saying? Like,
I had a friend of mine ask me if I thought it was a conspiracy. And I said no, because in order for there to be a conspiracy, there has to be one group. And you've got 2 or 3 groups involved in this that absolutely hate each other. So they're sure as hell not working together.
so
I
does
think
that lead you to believe that they really don't know, and then therefore they're legitimately scared, and therefore, you know what I
no,
mean?
no, because there's too many people right now that have platforms. Of course, platforms that are in jeopardy of getting removed from YouTube and Facebook because they're not peddling the authoritative
Narrative. Yeah.
the narrative. Yeah. I think that this was an opportunity for the media. I think it was an opportunity for political operatives that don't like Trump. I think this was an opportunity for professional disease mitigation people. It was an opportunity for a lot of people, and they are all trying their level best to maximize it for their own benefit. And, you know, I'm absolutely in no way, shape, or form or fashion, you know, a respecter or supporter or admirer of Donald Trump. Never have been, never will be. But based on their behavior, what was it you said? You'll do what you do your action, but not your thoughts. That I just can't avoid it. That impeachment didn't work, you know, and this is just based on their actions. And you know, we're looking at Sweden. You know, like literally the only place on planet Earth not suffering from Stockholm syndrome right now is Sweden.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and I have this incredibly powerful micro computer in my pocket, and I can look up the data for myself, and when I look at it, I don't have a fear response. And you know, and I have that right to not to, you know, but when you have people that say, for example, oh, well, these protesters, these people that are protesting, well, just a bunch of white nationalist, neo-Nazi Trump supporters. And I'm thinking, what about the people in Lebanon and Russia and England and Hong Kong and Brazil and Slovenia? Are they right-wing white nationalist Trump supporters too? Because they're all in the streets right now saying the same thing everybody else is saying. When you decide that you're going to either threaten someone with having their freedom taken away because they are willing to, you know, protest, and you automatically decided that, well, they're racist or they're this, that, or the other. No, I think they're just pissed off. And are there a bunch of MAGA hats and Trump flags? Well, sure there are. But there's also a lot of people that are unwilling to give away their liberty just because you say so. You know?
Yeah.
So.
Oh yeah, yeah, and I get that. And that that hits, and that makes sense. I guess I wonder. I think there's only a certain amount that the psyche's going to take, where you know the general consensus these days, and I say these days because it feels like a fucking eternity since this whole shutdown has come to pass, is like, we're 8 weeks into it, bro. Like,
Yeah.
the first 4, it's like, get used to it. Okay, we'll swing by, we'll just go out shopping. And now, 8 weeks into it, the vibe, the general vibe that I get is, you know what, I'm gonna take my chances. I'm not in a bad shape. I'm generally healthy. I'm generally this. I'm not going to put my grandmother in a risk. Okay, that's a general consensus that most of us could come to. Without being told anything, and not even to get into the authoritarianism or any of that of it. Is, when you don't understand something, the logical thing is to stop. When you catch a deer on the side of the road, the first thing it does is stop, and it perceives what's going on, and then maybe the whitetail goes up and it takes off. But the good move to me was, hey, let's stop. Okay, but then you get to the place where hospitals, nobody's coming in. They're only half full. They're furloughing nurses. They're furloughing doctors. Elective surgeries aren't being done. Okay. And now, it seems like they're doing the thing that needs to be done, which is relaxing that a little bit. And I get what you're saying. Like, obviously we don't need told that. We don't, I'm not going to control you. You're not going to control me. But there are a certain number of us that do need direction. There's a certain number of us that need a little bit of direction in how to go throughout life, without hurting other people, which is unfortunate. But I mean, that's why you have a paradigm of the people that have more money than the people that have less money. It's not like the people that have more money are stealing it from people. The people that have less money are signing up to make money from the person with more money. You know what I'm saying? So there is that, but I don't know. I feel like at this point we're down the road a little bit. We're down the rabbit hole with now what do we do? And we're all trying to be like Sweden. We're all trying to say, oh, maybe that was the right move in the first place.
Yeah.
But there was a lot of alarmism. There was a lot of freak out, knee-jerk reaction, which we are really good at as Americans.
Yeah.
Chris, anytime we're given something, like it's almost become my go-to is like, okay, I need to give this 2 or 3 days to marinate, because the first thing we're going to do is be presented with, hey, everybody, freak out. And then the second is, oh, here's the reaction to that. And then the third is going to be a rebuttal to the reaction, which proves the first thing a little bit more right than we thought it was. And I'm just like, it's almost too much, man.
One thing that I think helped me the most with the philosophy was first understanding that where there's no victim, there's no crime. So that means that if a person smokes a joint and some people somewhere wrote some words on paper that said he's not allowed to smoke that joint, that's still not a crime, And so if you look at crime statistics, crimes where there are actual victims are way down.
Oh yeah, I'm sure.
But when the people that are writing the words on paper make more and more and more things illegal, and there was a guy that even wrote this book called 3 Felonies a Day, and it goes through and explains how the average American commits 3 felonies every day.
I just heard about this. Yes. I haven't checked it out.
They create more crimes, and then it makes the net bigger. So then it comes through and it sweeps. Oh, look at all of these criminals. And I'm thinking, yeah, but they didn't actually hurt anybody. They just broke the law. And then once they get pulled into that system, dude, it's almost impossible to get out. And of course, it's so disproportionate. Black and brown people, you know.
Yep, and they do it on purpose. It's like what is that? Gerrymandering. It's redlining.
Yeah.
They make it a point to make sure that the certain people get kept down and the certain people don't get kept down. Oh, absolutely. Or the fact that Appalachian America. I hate to say it, but dude, I try to find workers around here, and buddy, they don't have it in them. They're just not workers. You know what I mean? They're just not. They're not poor enough. You know what I mean? Apparently somebody's taking care of them. Daddy's taking care of them, and it's disgusting to me. It's like, that's not even acceptable, man. And then I could go and hire a Hispanic guy or a black guy, and they work their tails off, because they're trying to get up. They're trying to get to that level. They're clawing for it. Yeah. So, and then I have to have these arguments with people, and they're like, it's frustrating. It's frustrating, Chris.
I had this experience one time, took a load to Kennesaw, Georgia, building this big apartment complex, and I had a load of cabinets. And this sounds like some anecdotal story, but I swear to God it happened. So there were 6 guys on the site. There was 2 white guys, there were 2 black guys, and 2 Mexicans. And
it sounds like a joke.
I know, it happened. And so, of course, the 2 white dudes were in charge. And so they stood at the back of the trailer smoking cigarettes. And the 2 black guys would come up and, they would complain a little bit, but they would grab a cabinet, haul it inside, come back out, get another one. Every 15 minutes, the white guys would grab one. And then these Mexicans would come up, dude, one cabinet up on each shoulder and haul ass, And I just remember looking that day. This was probably 1999, 20 some years ago. And I just remember going, well, that don't look like what I've heard about on the news. I just saw, and it's just one of those little nuggets throughout your life that you can't ever get rid of, I'm
about to get deep on you, Chris. So do you think it's an ebb and flow of like, okay, so is it an ebb and flow where there's always a minority? Doesn't matter the minority. If it was 100 years ago, it was, I know.
Yeah.
Is there, usually there's a labor pool of people that don't have what the what-haves do have, right? So they're going to scratch and claw until they can get somewhere, right? Until there's an overtaking or there's a change or there's a whatever. I wonder, throughout society, throughout history, has that been going on since the day? I mean, since
100%.
And that's the way I think of it. There's always some kind of labor that is to be had that is hungrier for it. And you can exploit that labor. And that's, again, back to empathy. Like, all my guys get treated the same. Doesn't matter what their color. The only color I care about is green, and whoever makes me the most. So that's the way they get treated. So, consequently, I have a Hispanic guy that gets paid the best of all my men, all 10 men, he gets paid the best. And then there's a white guy. Then 2 down is a black guy. But, the only thing that matters is how they produce. Now, that's a little bit different because I'm a private industry versus, the national and the averages and all that stuff. But, yeah, it's just strange to me because we're in the same situation we've always been in. There's somebody that wants it more, and there's some, kid that thinks he hit a triple when he was born on third. What do we do about that kid?
Yeah. Well, as I've found, that kid unfortunately will learn it maybe before it's too late. You will love. I'm telling you, like get that Renegade History because get it
I
on
will.
Audible because right, it's talking about what you're talking about right now because it was the blacks, then it was the Italians and the Irish and the
Yes.
Jews, and it
Yeah.
was just
Chinese
they
were in
just
there.
traded. They
Hmm.
almost traded places
Hmm.
of how they were. Oh, okay. Well, you're no longer dog shit. We're going to pick you up, and now you're good. And oh, look, here's another new batch of dog shit, and we'll put you in here. And that's what we've done to Hispanics now, you know. And
Yep.
I
Cut the
started
door
paying
off.
attention to Hispanic like society, Latin culture 3 years ago, and I just started looking and going, what is it exactly about Latin people and Latin culture that have the central planners and elites in America so terrified that they've got to build a wall 100 foot tall and 100 foot thick? And I think what I realized, it's not about keeping them out. It's about keeping us in.
No,
And
what do you mean? You think we're gonna head that way?
I think walls work both ways.
Agreed.
And I think that this idea, well, back up. I mean, I'm an anarchist. So if I can't respect or see the state as legitimate, then I can't see their borders as legitimate either. My border's legitimate. I have a small piece of property here that's ours. Okay, and we say who comes and we say who goes. And my mother-in-law's next door, and so she's got a bigger piece of property, and she decides who comes and who goes. But if she invites somebody to her house, it's none of my damn business where they came from and how they got there. That I don't have that authority to tell
No,
her, well,
no
you can't
shit.
have those visitors from that place. Um, that would be a violation of her right to property, and it would be a violation of her guests' right to travel. And so it's my position that the enforcement of political borders and the restriction of the fundamental God-given natural human right to freedom of travel and movement is the worst of all tyranny. That literally border walls are the in my view, in my mind, the literal worst thing a state can do is control borders and try to control movement of people. Because what am I going to do, if they come around with their microchip or their vaccine or whatever? I mean, if all 50 states, if they vote, okay, citizen, you got to have the shot. And I'm like, I'm not getting the shot. It's not happening.
Yeah.
If I can't escape, I'm a slave.
Well, not
Yeah.
only that, yeah, I do know. And okay, so let's take it a little bit further. Let's say, Sweden's looking for herd immunity.
Yeah.
That's what they're looking for, right? They're looking for the virology of, okay, how many of these people have the antibodies, blah, blah, blah. Well, as a global community, I mean, if it is what it is, then the borders only, yeah, I mean, it's much like keeping us in our houses. The less bacteria, the less things we breathe in to strengthen our immunity is the weaker we make ourselves, right?
Right.
In my opinion, right? So, and to me, I've met a bunch of people from all over the planet, and they all seem like sweet, smiling, happy people. They doing the same things that we're trying to do. Raise a family, have enough to eat, have a nice place to live, et cetera, et cetera. So by keeping that from transpiring, from keeping us from, coming into contact with each other, the only thing we're doing is hurting ourselves. It's almost like Monsanto's running this bitch. Like, hey, we've got corn, but you can't have this corn. No, the corn gets better when we share the corn, and that corn interbreeds, and now we get stronger corn. We get stronger. This is all,
Yeah.
it's, to me, it's almost become, Chris, like, um, there's a certain amount of people when they get that little taste of money and they get a little bit more money, then they try to keep everybody else from feeling that taste, from getting that taste, like they're better, like they're smarter. And that's something that people, I think we as a people need to fight very hard against and rally against, is to have enough but also be empathetic to those that don't, and raise each other up as we go, because that's obviously not the end all be all. Unless Jeff Bezos and Bill Gates are building Elysium, and this is all a little sidebar so they can finish their spaceship and get it up in the air and then go out there and get away from us peasants, and we can mine their gold and send them food up, which I don't think is going to happen.
Right.
But you know what I'm saying? Like, we're trapped on a planet together. This is where we are. We're in the middle of space together. It's okay. Let's just figure that out. Let's sort it out. It'll be fine. We don't need. You're right. We don't have to have people telling other people what to do. We can have these freedoms. We can do all that. But at the end of the day, we're also going to have to agree on who builds the roads, and then we're going to have to come up with a system to get that done. And I think that America's done a pretty good job, as far as since Roman days, maybe, where I just don't want to be the fall of Rome. I don't want to be the next glitch. I want to be the predecessor to something that happened greater, a start. And maybe that's what Rome was. But anyways, yeah, it's some deep, heavy stuff.
Well, one of the most important questions that I learned to ask was who benefits.
Right.
And so if you gather up all the trucks, all the tractor trailers in the United States, 85% of them are owned by companies that have 6 trucks or less. 15% are owned by companies that have like 5,000 trucks or more, right? So in the big circle, you got this little tiny sliver that are these giant corporations, 5,000, 10,000, 20,000, 25,000, 30,000 trucks. They're just a little sliver. Who you reckon benefits from all these electronic log mandates, the CSA mandates, the safety, emissions controls?
Right.
We have 5 trucks. Okay. And we have 207s, an 04, an 06, and a 2010. And the 2010 is the only one that has modern emissions controls on it. And the only reason we have it is because we bought it, broke down, and got it for $3,500. And it has 900,000 miles on it. My truck that I drive has 1.7 million. Next truck has 1.4 million. One has 1.1, and then there's one we don't know. We have no idea. It could have 4 million on it. We just don't have a clue. Because we bought it and the original motor and the original ECM was gone, and somebody had changed the instrument cluster. So we have no idea.
It is what it is. Yeah.
But at least a million, an 07. We can't, as a 5-truck fleet that wants to pay our drivers at the top of the salary range, which is 75 to 90,000 a year. I can't put them in a truck that costs $150,000 that will just shut off on its own. I can't accept that risk.
Right.
We pay $10,000 for trucks when we acquire them. A new truck is $150,000. And when the emissions controls go bad and it just shuts off, and it's a $2,000 tow bill to get it to the dealer for them to tell you, we'll get it fixed in a couple of weeks. I can't,
Right. Not acceptable. Yeah.
But if you got 25,000 trucks and your driver breaks down on the side of the road, and you've got to take one of your other 25,000 trucks and bring it to him and just keep on going. When my truck blew up in 2017, And I went to work for a company driver. I drove 3 different trucks in 30 days. They gave me a truck. It broke down. Like on the first load, it broke down. They put me in another truck to get me to another truck, and I drove that truck the rest of the time that I was there. Just roll right through them. But I can't, as a small business owner that's responsible for these people and their livelihood and their wives and their children. And not only would I want them to make a living, I want them to make a great living. And I want to teach them and train them how to go and do this on their own. And so that they can go buy their own cheap $10,000 truck and go make $150,000 a year. That's what I want. But
right.
Who benefits? But they don't want you asking that question. And the they is lots of different people. And I was accused of, well, you just hate society. No, I don't. Well, you hate authority. No, I hate the state. But my boss has authority over me, and the carrier that we're leased to has authority over us.
Right.
And there's a contract, and if any one of us violates it, we can just go somewhere else.
Move on. Right.
But I don't have the option to just put guns to people's heads and tell them that they have to do what I want them to do.
Right. Nor should you.
Yeah. Right. Well, man, we've been at it a while. I would love to do it again sometime because
we have. Damn.
This is the first chance we've ever really got to talk like this. So I'm digging it.
Yeah. Yeah, man. I appreciate it. Sorry about that. My phone's been dying out. The battery's dying, and I got people coming in the backyard and stuff.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
All right, man. Well, it was an absolute blast to have you on here. And we definitely got to do it again. And we got to do it sometime in person where I can sit out there on that patio and drink one of them beers with you too. So
I dig that. Hey, I appreciate the opportunity, man. I dig your philosophy, and I dig that you're driving us forward. So thank you.
Outstanding.
For having me.
All right, man. Appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, be good.
All right, see you.